70% of Americans are overweight, 42% obese, 36% of New Zealand are categorised as obese. Obesity killed more people per year than COVID.
Today's guest shows us that it's never too late to start over. This guest was well into her 50s and had the most impressive corporate career behind her when she decided to start her own business.
I could have sat down on the floor and cried at the first conference we went to because the doctors got it. But, the other thing is what we're learning now. When you're on any synthetic hormone, you suppress your endogenous hormone or your own hormone down to zero.
She took the weight management and health world by storm and is one of the leading female founders, not just here in New Zealand, but globally.
20 years ago, I think I was an absolute prat. You're so desperate to prove yourself. You're so desperate to say, I know what I'm doing. I can do this. As you grow older or grow wiser or just grow up, the biggest thing is to say, I don't know.
I am beyond excited to welcome Sarah Kennedy here and have her share her story, how she went from a vet to being leading CEO of a chicken company to now running her own multinational business. Welcome to the Powerhouse Diaries, the podcast for and by brave, bold, and badass business owners. If you're an entrepreneur who has outgrown those cookie-cutter business strategies and hashtag girl boss cliches, you're in the right place because let's face it, entrepreneurship is at least equal parts messy buns and runny mascara as it is the highlight reel we see online. So let's get real about what it really takes to build and run a quote-unquote successful business, blood, sweat, and margaritas included. I'm your host, Yaela, your rebellious entrepreneurial fairy godmother, and join me as I sit down with rockstar female founders for the most juicy, deep, and meaningfuls around success, life, and everything in between. Now it's time for you to step into your powerhouse era. Oh, Sarah, I am beyond excited to have you here today because the minute I heard a little bit about your story and your background, I had to literally pick my job off the ground. So let's start at the beginning. How did we get here? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Oh, a little bit. Well, great to be here. Thank you very much. A little bit about my story. I actually graduated, I think, too many years ago as a veterinarian, and I practiced for around about 5 years. But I always seemed to get into exotic animals. I did the zoo work in Wellington, so did things like give birth to baby bucks, do an autopsy on a giant lion that died. I went to the UK like most people did from New Zealand and practiced over there for some time. And when I came back, I joined a company called NRM in those days as an animal nutritionist. And I specialised in aquaculture. And I was also at that time asked to be the vet for the underwater SeaWorld. And when I went to see them, and I said, look, I really don't know a lot about fish. I know quite a bit about nutrition now, but not really about fish. They said, well, you probably know more than anyone in New Zealand. When we'd gone through vet school, if we used to always joke, if you had a goldfish swimming upside down, you would said to sprinkle salt, which helped with the osmotic pressure of the fish. But if that didn't work, just to simmer gently. So we didn't know a lot, and we didn't do a lot on fish. So I did a very rapid learning curve on fish, which was fascinating. So the shrimps in Noumea and salmon in New Zealand. I started taking over more and more bits of that company and ended up being general manager, I think, when I was about 28. So I always call it and I shouldn't have, it wasn't a baby company, but I was called it my baby company because it was in the agriculture and it was feed mills. And we sell product. I then went on to be co-opted to be general manager retail of Tegel, which is chicken, selling chicken.
Yeah, it's quite a different side of animal care.
Well, we would always say I went from saving them to feeding them to killing them. But it was an extraordinary learning opportunity because it put me into the FMCG or the fast-moving category and into supermarkets. And interesting enough, most people don't know, when you kill a chicken, you literally have 24 hours to sell it. So taking a bird to the table will take 4 years if you look at the whole breeding program, and then you have 24 hours to sell it fresh. So enormous, and you're not putting a product together, you're pulling it apart. So it's no good to have a wing promotion if you don't have a leg promotion. And so the logistics in it are fascinating. I was in that, and then I got approached to be CEO of a small but iconic company in New Zealand called Healthories, and we were the main vitamin mineral supplement and health food seller, in fact. And, for me, it was the opportunity to be a CEO, but also it was right through the supply chain. So we had manufacturing. So we had all manufacturing, product development, and so on like that. So
that's where you got your first taste of what it actually takes to create a product.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And and it was a fabulous company, and I loved the team. I loved what we did, and we actually grew it from 25 to 200 million over the next 10, 11. But it wasn't just me. I had a fantastic team, and and right through the whole supply chain, and the fact that we'd probably launch 40 to 50 products a year. So very much driven about innovation, what was new, what was coming out. And I will admit now, and I can do this because I'm going back to America now and taking something incredibly innovative to them. But in those days, we used to go to about 6 of us. So myself and the marketing team would go to something called Supply Side West in Anaheim. And it's still there, and it gets bigger and bigger every year. But we would literally walk the aisles to see what was new and what we could plagiarize to bring down to Australasia. Because, it's all trend, it was all trend driven. Who was the first to get, a glucosamine, which is a anti-inflammatory, who was the first to get an ester C or something like that. So, yeah, we had a lot of fun in those years, and just the rapid of it.
Yeah, and I can imagine, the experience that I had moving from Europe to New Zealand about 8 years ago, and this is now, but I can imagine even more so then, New Zealand, because of its geographical location and isolation, is often, I don't want to say behind, maybe more protected, and in some areas a bit slower on the uptake of trends,
totally.
Which can be also like an amazing competitive advantage. So I can imagine you guys just going there and it's almost like stepping into a time machine. You're like, great!
And of course, America, on supplementation, it's literally supplementation on speed. I think the other thing which is fascinating about it, it's such a big market that you can be really niche. In New Zealand, I say a niche market's about 3 people. So whatever we brought back here, had to be transportable or transposable, to more generic or a wider audience. So, yeah, I loved that. And then when I finished there, I was very lucky. I'd been... I was accepted to do my Sloan Fellowship at MIT in Boston.
Just an Ivy League school.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because this was where you were in your 30s at this point?
No. The Sloan Fellowship is for people that have been in business for about, at least 20 years. So the average age was about 45. I just lied. I was a bit older, and I was about that. But it was...
And they can't comment on a woman's age.
Not if they wanted to live.
No.
It was amazing. So 100 people from around the world, 90 men, 10 women was about the ratio. You never lacked for a dance partner. In fact, interesting, of the 10 women, only one brought her husband with her, and then he was sent home after the first semester. So women are incredibly independent. I actually left my husband at home as well. and he'd come up about every 6 weeks. You know, the work was so intense, you didn't really want someone, you know, hanging around like, what are we eating tonight?
But vice versa, generally speaking, out of those, 90% men in the program, a lot of them relocated.
They all brought their wives.
Yeah.
All brought their wives, children, all the rest.
Interesting.
I know, because their wives look after them. You know, so look, it was fascinating. I loved it. It was sort of my eat, love, pray year for a professional woman.
Oh, I love that.
You know, to be able to skip out the door. You know, I had a beautiful apartment that you only get from being older. You know, it's not the student grunge flat. Literally with my backpack on and go to MIT with the most extraordinary professors in the world. And you just was surrounded. And I think that was where, for me, as you said about New Zealand, it took me outside New Zealand. Suddenly the world wasn't a scary place.
Yes.
But my first learning group, just the most extraordinary people. I had, there was 4 of us and 3 males, of course, because I had to split the women up. One was Hiro, who was amazing, who came from Japan, and one of Kirin, one of the largest beer companies. One was Lithinio, not Lithinio, was it Lithinio? Who was from Spain, from the Spanish Treasury. And one was Stacey, who was a 6'5" African-American in the Vice President's office. So you just being surrounded by these people, and that's what...
Yeah, it's like a professional candy store in terms of
it was.
People to meet and to learn from and to co-create with. What I really loved, we had a little chat, obviously, before we started shooting the show, and I would love to hear a little bit more about that decision-making process, that moment when you decided to actually, that you had that vision of, I actually want this, I want to go after this. I believe you were in Italy on holiday.
Oh, yes, it was amazing. So I'd taken a break after I finished at Healthories, which was in Vitaco. We'd been bought by private equity. I'd been group CEO. So I took probably a 6-month break. So my husband and I went to Italy. My sister has a house over there, which made it easy. And we were driving up to Florence, I remember. And I was sitting there in the car, and I said to him, I want to do a Sloan Fellowship. And he's driving, and he's like, yeah, sure. And he turned around and goes, what the hell's that?
He's like, yes, dear, what?
So it was amazing. So that was, 10, 12 years ago. So I had to do my application. And that time in Italy, everything was dial-up. And you had to do an electronic application. And almost down to your kindergarten grade. So trying to get everything together with it. And of course, being in a different country. But I do always remember we were in Sicily, and it was the last day for the application, and I'd rewritten essays and done everything like that. And I think we were in Palmino or somewhere like that. And he's like, oh, would you want to stay here? And I said, I don't care. Just get me somewhere with internet access. And so we got somewhere with internet access, and I always remember pushing that button, and that was set the die in place.
Oh, that was like a pivotal moment. It's like a dum-dum-dum.
I know. And then they rang me in January. And I flew then to America from Italy and had an interview. And then they actually rang me early in January and said, you've been accepted.
Amazing.
So I didn't start till, I think it was June. It must have been June, but, it's just, I'll always look back on that time and just think how lucky I was to, A, have that break, to be exposed, and to remain friends with all of those people, because it's a small cohort, and to have that 18 months of just pure learning. And in fact, every semester we went on a school trip, which is hilarious, with a group
of grown-ass humans.
Grown-ass humans who are, really intelligent but really stupid on practical things. I think that's why the men took their wives. But, we went to New York, we went to the stock exchange, we went to all of these things. We went to Silicon Valley. We went to Facebook before it went public. You always know what a company's like before it goes public. It was in this sort of old warehouse with graffiti everywhere and everything like that. All of the cars in the car park are like really old. I mean, I still think they only had about 400 employees. And of course, immediately after an IPO, you know, they're all back in Porsches and everything like that.
Driving their Teslas. Oh no, those didn't exist yet.
They didn't exist then. Neither did Uber, neither did. But, you know, MIT is all about innovation.
Yeah.
They've got a massive ecosystem in there. So I think that really whetted my appetite for it, yeah.
Yeah, so you came out of those 18 months of that little incubator full of inspiration and connections, and I just imagine you kind of with that backpack through the streets of Boston, which is also such one of the few picturesque cities in the US, if you ask me. So that's beautiful. And I can imagine you walk out a different woman than walks in there. I'm really curious to hear what did that unlock for you after it was done?
I think for me it was, you know, that internationalization. I think for me, you know, after having 10 years or 11 years as a CEO of a company that, you know, was, and with that amazing growth, you know, which was both organic and acquisition, it was for me, it was the time out, because you are relentless in one space. You are relentless. You don't get time to look outside and do. So, yeah, just if anyone, I would recommend anyone not to say, oh, I'm too old or I don't want to take that time out for my career. If you have that opportunity, you know, just absolutely take it and see if you can do it in such a way, you know, maybe I was very spoiled with it, that you can immerse yourself in it versus, you know, just doing it part-time. But
or being
I will
pulled.
say I was lucky.
But I love that. And would you say that experience kind of planted the seed for Calocurb and what you have built and are building today?
I think certainly yes, in the fact that, you know, I love America. I mean, look, you can say whatever you want, but I love America. I love the 300
And they
million.
love you.
I love this. Well, they love the New Zealand accent. I was talking to America this morning and they're like, oh, I could just carry on listening to you forever. I'm like, really? I don't get it because, you know, it's like we don't have an accent. You do. But
it's probably because when, you know, we say dick, they hear dick. And, and when we say sex, they hear sex.
I know. Well, that's probably why they're so entranced. I think I'm just talking dirty the whole time. So, absolutely. And just the opportunity and the, you know, just everything, I suppose, and you know, this, I think I told you, this last 12 months, next week will be my 12th trip to the US.
Yeah, it's more like we're lucky to have you visit us here today.
Well, that's right. It's interesting. I'm sure they're going to stop me at the counter saying, like, yeah, this is odd. But, you know.
Or you don't even have to show your passport anymore. They just know you. They're like, hey, Sarah.
Well, we always laugh because, you know, we usually travel 2 or 3 of us. And it's always a race if we're going to different places. Who can sell the most? And I think Louise won last time because she sold to the guy on the border control. She told him about Calocurb, and he's like, oh, how do I get hold of this? And she gave him a code for it. So we're like, yeah, okay, you win.
Perfect. So the challenge is on. I believe you're going to the States in a few days. And I think the Uber driver, your first point of contact, needs to be your first sale.
Yes, the race will be on. Well, we always had these mad competitions.
No, but that's so important. And, oh, my God, I want to go in all different directions. I believe the most successful companies and people are the ones that incorporate play.
Oh, totally.
And joy. If you're not, we were talking about this before when we were trying to record some content. And, you know, you always are a little, no matter how many times I do this, you sit down, it feels weird. There's cameras looking at you, you know, you feel a little bit awkward. And the more let go, you can have fun, you can be silly, you can fuck up, the more you can be yourself,
Absolutely,
the more magnetic you are. And I think, I mean, that's a big part of what my work with the Powerhouse Alliance as a whole is about being the permission slip no one ever needed to be your unique, weird-ass, magical self.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think it's corporates breed it out of you. And, particularly, a smaller company. And that's why you'll see startups, are so much fun. And they had weird and quirky people, and they have, weird and quirky offices, because it's both a budgetary constraint and it's this lack of probably this corporate overview. And I'm not blaming corporates either, because I'm saying, I always compare them to a very large ship. So a large, let's say, ocean liner, let's not say the Navy boat that ran aground, but they have a large ocean liner. And, you can't have everyone running around low and go, yay, we're going to do this tonight, we're going to do this tonight, we'll have this for dinner and we'll try this, because, you've got to have that going in that direction with that 6,000 people or whatever. But if you look at that compared to a little sailboat, you've got 6 people on board, a lot rougher weather, a lot more things like that, but a lot more fun, a lot more interaction with your surroundings. However, as you know, with a small boat, you're more likely to get seasick and go very rough weather than in a large ocean liner. So, these are the comparisons. So I don't say, I think it's very hard to be outrageous in a larger corporate and to be, just be yourself, because there's so many processes and systems that have to go into place.
And that they have their role, and they are serving in a way. But we were speaking about this earlier, when I think, forget the corporate world for a second, I think in general, within the society we grow up in, especially, I think this is true for humans, but, let me speak from my own perspective as a female founder. I think we all go through our own kind of rite of passage over time, a coming of age, which has nothing to do with your literal age, where we start off caring a lot, giving a lot of fucks. We have big boxes of fucks, and we give them for everything, and we try to fit into boxes, and often boxes that aren't even there, but we just imagined them. And then there comes a point where that is just too constricting. It doesn't work. Or we have our own dark night of the soul and find ourselves in crisis and ask ourselves what we're doing, which then often is the breakdown before the breakthrough of stepping at least more into our own power, owning our voice, being ourselves within whatever structure we operate in. Now, we were talking about this before. You had many years. You had a thriving, awe-inspiring career in a very traditionally male-dominated world. Now, also, let's not blame corporates. Let's not blame men. Let's just talk about that dynamic, how that was. You just mentioned there was, you were one of 10 women in the program, and how that kind of shaped how you show up today as a female founder, where you get to set the rules.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think age helps a lot. You just become far more comfortable in yourself. When you're younger, it's a lot more competitive. You're a first-time CEO. You could be a first-time general manager, a first-timing, and you're like, I'm not quite sure how I should behave. I'm not quite sure. And so I think you grow into yourself and you become more comfortable. And of course you experience so many more things that you're kind of like, I've seen that before. This too will pass. So I think age is a fantastic leveler and a fantastic educator as well. But, you're still going to have crisis moments when you go, really? Yeah,
really? Still, Sarah?
So I didn't expect to see that one. So, I think it does. And the faster you can become more comfortable with yourself and more authentic, I think the happier you are as well, because you really can't change your innateness. You can dress it up, you can dress it down, but you are, and you can do a lot of things to it, but you are who you are. So you will be more comfortable with yourself the more innate you can be.
You cannot argue with your innateness like that. We should put that on a mug right there.
Yeah, and embrace that. Well, no, it just accept it and be, follow that. And also have your set of your own moral compass, what you want to do or how you want to act. And I always had a fabulous CFO once who said, Sarah, you should always, with someone that's left the company, be able to walk up to them on the side of the road and shake their hand and feel good about it.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of the mantra, treat people how you would like to be treated. But, you've got to be able to see them on the side of the road, be able to stop. And I hope in just about all instances, I've been able to do that.
That's amazing. Do you look back with that wiser, broader lens that comes with time and age and experience? And obviously always having had the intent of being, treating people how you want to be treated and just being a decent human. But looking back, are there moments where you look back and have a little like cringe from a space of, at the time, with compassion for yourselves, like, at the time I was really trying to prove myself, or maybe this was happening, and look back at that version of you and wish you could kind of whisper something in her ear?
Oh, God, yeah. I look back now, I think I said to you before, 20 years ago, I think I was an absolute prat. I just, you're so desperate to, to prove yourself. You're so desperate to say, I know what I'm doing. I can do this. And, you really just like, I should have never a clue. And, so I do but look back at some and think, oh, God, really? That desperateness to show I was in control. And I think, as you grow older or grow wiser or just grow up, the biggest thing is to say, I don't know. Can everyone else tell me? What do you guys think? I really don't know. And, how would I, and just allow people, particularly in your team, to come to you.
Yeah.
And try not to close out any ideas. And I think also for me getting older is not everyone's going to be like you. Look, if they look at what, an innate special thing is in that person, and it may be their special knowledge or the way they communicate or something like that. So people aren't going to be cookie cutters.
No. Thank God. How boring would life be?
I had a wonderful chief scientist at Healthories, and I remember I was so much younger then. And it drove me crazy. His office was always like a bomb site. And in my very, early CEO then, it's like, no, particularly chief of science, it should be all neat. This is, dealing with quality and lab testing and all of these things. But I look back on it now and I think, God, he was brilliant. I could have asked him anything and he would have had that knowledge. What did it matter that his office was, just because it didn't fit what I think it should have been. So I do kind of look back on those and think I was quick to talk, but less to listen.
Oh, that is beautiful. Wow. I think we need to have all these quotes just kind of framed.
I'm just a little bit worrying because I'm sure my team now will bring them up. Quick to talk, Sarah.
Exactly. I thought you're now a lot more quick to listen.
Not so at the moment.
I'd love to circle back and go back to that moment where I believe you were in your 50s and decided to start your own business, and not just any business, like a science-backed product development, patented, like it's not, I'll start consulting, selling my time. After years and years being in corporate, that switch from, I say employee mindset, obviously CEO and running these businesses, but still running other people's brands to jumping in the deep, like just face planting into it and starting Calocurb. I'd love to hear what compelled you, because I always believe, that we need a certain level of insanity to not just start.
Oh, I think complete insanity.
Okay, thank God, it's not just me.
It's not a certain amount. I think it's complete and utter insanity and just a singular, polarized vision of it.
Yeah.
And someone said to me yesterday, and I have reflected on this, did you ever have any doubts? And, I've just been so singularly focused that no.
Yeah.
I can, and I touch wood, and I hate saying this, but I've never said, I think we should pull the plug. And, there would have been so many times that, probably, with more sanity, not insanity, I would have.
Yeah, well, I think that's true for any innovation in the world. And I think that's also the mark of a powerful entrepreneur and visionary. It's not a lack of running into obstacles. It's just how do we pivot? How do we change? How do we move around this? It's just not, stopping is not an option. And that's often easier when you're building a vision that is bigger than you. Tell me about the vision of Calocurb and what the legacy is that you are creating.
Well, it was interesting. It was presented to me, and everything in life has, little connections. A guy that used to work for me in Fonterra, he had left and was now working for Plant and Food. He came to me with an extract, and he said, hey, from your time in this industry, what should we do with this extract? And I'm like, I'd never seen anything with that amount of science in that larger category in the world. So you always look at about 4 categories in the world. One of them is mind or brain. The other is sleep is a huge one. The other one is mobility, so arthritis. And a huge one, anxiety is a huge one, but they're sort of connected to the brain. And the 5th one is weight management. Yeah. Absolutely huge. So just in real summary, there's a group of very talented scientists in 2010 had a hypothesis that they would find a plant-based extract that suppressed appetite. They wrote up a grant application and put it into MBIE and got a $20 million 6-year grant. And they based this on historical reasons. So the historical reason, there would have been multiple, but the ones I always relate to are that in times of famine, people in the Scottish Highlands chewed very, very bitter berries, and which suppressed their hunger. In the Kalahari Desert, before tribesmen go out hunting, they chew a very, very bitter cactus so they can hunt for a while without wanting to eat. So, and then there'd been some early work done in mice studies. So they had this, just extraordinary, the work they did. And in quick summary, they literally took 300 biopsies from the human gastrointestinal. They mapped all of these bitter taste receptors right down through our intestine. So we have bitter taste receptors on our tongue, but we actually have them all the way down our intestine. It's never been mapped before and never been shown. And they mapped all of those. They then tested these cells they grew it out into this what we'd call an enteroendocrine model in the lab. And then they tested over 1,000 extracts against the cells. And literally, they found 2 that had the potential to stimulate the release of our appetite-suppressing hormones. So one was a potato alkaloid, which is great, but it's poisonous. So you'd be thin.
Which is great, but you'd be dead.
Yeah, you'd be dead. Look great, but dead.
Super skinny.
Yeah, super skinny, but dead. And the other one was a hop-based extract that they named amaracate. Amara meaning, look, scientists don't ever leave them to naming because no one can pronounce it. But it's Latin, I think, or Greek Latin, I think, for amara meaning bitter and sate meaning satiation. So we are activating what we call the bitter brake in the stomach. They then, on finding the eureka, went through a whole lot of other things. but then took it into a human clinical trial. And that was really the seminal clinical trial, and that was in 2016, I think. And that showed that we released the 3 appetite-suppressing hormones, CCK, GLP-1, and PYY, at 600% above base level, and got an 18% reduction in calorie intake. So that was all great. So absolutely perfect. So it was brought to me, and I'm just like, I cannot believe this. This is extraordinary. It's science-based.
It combines your nutritional background with it.
And I also think and you've always got to have some story. My whole life, I'd grown up with 4 sisters. My whole life had a love-hate relationship with food. It's not just women, but like many women, that ideal how you should look, always dieting, binging, yo-yo, not really understanding. And this to me was just so a passion for me. And, I can absolutely say I've been on Calocurb for 6 years, and it has completely changed my relationship with food. I can eat now. I'm a happy person with food.
Yes.
I no longer have to binge and say I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be doing this, I should do this and that. I have a great relationship. I can eat. I just don't eat as much.
Yeah, and you can enjoy it. The shame is taken out of it.
Taken out.
And that is everything.
So we launched a company in 2018. Lots of stories, lots and lots of things. And that I was interviewed, not by the New Yorker, but it's another one in the US. And they said, do you mind me saying, how did you come up with such a naff name? Calocurb. And I said, it's really funny when you don't even have a real company and you're all 4 of you are sitting in a room with a bottle of wine and yelling what the name should be. And everyone's like, yeah, that's a dumb name. And so you come up with a name. But of course, the other thing you have to overlay on that, you've got to be able to trademark it worldwide. So, therein lies quite a difficult one. So they may sound naff, but boy, it's hard to come up with names. So anyway, we launched. But, I discovered the best mousetrap in the world, but it didn't mean everyone was going to come running. Trying to convince consumers, because we launched in
you
America,
went to consumers.
First. We launched in New Zealand and then in America almost immediately. That we were stimulating the release of their natural appetite-suppressing hormones that would tell the brain that they're full. They're like, what? What are you doing to me? You're mucking with my mind. And, it's just these really, it was, we grew, but it wasn't, it was hard work. It was hard. But we did a huge amount of learning over that time. But really our biggest breakthrough was in 2020, 2021. And, Wegovy, which is a sister to Ozempic,
yes,
was approved by the FDA for obesity management in the US. And basically with Wegovy, you are injecting in a synthetic GLP-1. So you know how I said we stimulate your natural GLP-1? Yeah. They are injecting it in. Novo Nordisk, I go down on my knees and I thank them every day. They spent $1 billion in advertising. $1 billion. They took out 236,000 doctors to lunch and dinner, right? So they educated the market on the etiology or what causes weight management. And basically this doctrine that we have heard for the last 50 years, it's willpower and exercise, is complete and utter rubbish. And
it's just chemicals. It
is a physiological or a biological. Our hindbrain, look, now you've got me onto a rant. Our hindbrain.
Now the vet comes out.
No, but our hindbrain, it was an asset during evolution because it makes you go out and hunt. If you drop your calories by 25%, your hunger actually doubles over 4 months, probably even more, but that's how long they've measured it. So it is trying to get you out of your cave and to go and hunt something, because this is feast and famine. But nowadays, with our brain, of course, we're surrounded, in the modern world or in the developed world, we're surrounded by food and easily consumable food. So we are getting cues all the time to eat before it goes away. So this is what they really educated both the doctors and consumers, well, less so in consumers, but about taking away this willpower behavior doctrine that we'd known and showing that there's a whole lot of biological and genetic reasons in it, which is why, things like Weight Watchers, who have taught portion control, who have taught this for the last 50 years, are now prescribing these drugs. Had to pivot because it was suddenly understood. So they did. And so suddenly, for us, it was, this incredible moment of now they could understand.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, everyone's like, oh, you're in such a right place at the right time. I'm like, yeah, 14
This is an
years.
overnight success. That's 14 years in the making.
That's right. So you kind of got to be always paddling to the wave, get on the crest of it, to catch that wave. But interesting, in the last year, I think there were 2 products on Amazon which mentioned, these are supplements that mentioned GLP-1. There is now 240.
Oh my God.
But we are the only patented one in the world, so granted patent, with 14 years and 30 million in research just on this one ingredient. So when we moved into the practitioner channel in America, when we moved into that in the start of 2023, it was just, unbelievable time. As I said, I could have sat down on the floor and cried at the first conference we went to because the doctors got it.
Yeah.
They absolutely got it. And so...
Thank you, Big Pharma. Appreciate it.
You don't often say that.
No, exactly.
But, the other thing is what we're learning now, which is interesting for us, when you are on these injectables, you suppress. And when you're on any synthetic hormone, you suppress your endogenous hormone or your own hormone. And when you're on an injectable, you suppress your own endogenous down to zero. So when you come off the injectables, one of the things that everyone knows about, your weight rebounds. And one of them is because you've got to kickstart that natural gut-brain axis, which is the one that, helped you through this.
Yes, whereas Calocurb actually stimulates your own body's processes.
We super stimulate. We actually exercise your little suppressors, your little L cells. And, people say, well, do they ever get worn out? Well, in fact, our scientists believe, and we're in a 4th human clinical at the moment, which is costing about $2 million, but they believe it's sort of kind of like we're going to improve them because we're super exercising. It's a bit like a muscle, but it's a cell, and we're super. So, by the time, as I said, I've been on it for 6 years. The reason being is I'm lazy. I intermittent fast, and so I can take my Calocurb in the morning, and I don't even have to think about. I don't even have to think about lunch till 1 o'clock or something like that.
So what do you say? Because we mentioned earlier, growing up as one of 4 sisters, and there is a huge place, obviously, in the health and wellness, because obesity worldwide is big. It's an epidemic. It's a problem. But what would you say your role is as a woman, as a founder, as a role model and a public figure, in the place Calocurb has within kind of the framework of societal pressures to look a certain way and to, the body image related issues?
Yeah. I think we never talk about appearance. We talk about weight management. And the reason being for that, just throwing out a few of these stats, 70% of Americans are overweight, 42% obese. let's not pat ourselves on the back. In New Zealand, 36% of New Zealand are categorised as obese. Obesity killed more people per year than COVID. So you are basically, when you are carrying too much weight or fat cells, you are putting your heart under stress, you're putting your kidneys under stress, you're putting everything. They call it non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, these types of things. So your body is not designed. You basically are living in inflammation. So, yeah, it's absolutely not about appearance. Look, you feel better when you feel, but your body is not designed to carry too much weight. It is designed, and that's all of our organs start to suffer.
Yeah.
So, we talk about health. Look, let me just deal with the 42% obese, the 70%, that are overweight, and let's just talk about health long before we talk about an appearance. If you're going to go from a size 4 to a size 0, look good on you, but we're not talking that.
No, and I think you're talking physical health and everything that comes with that when you're carrying too much weight, and that's not even touching upon the world of mental health and anxiety and depression that comes with being obese and having the health issues that often come with that. So.
You read these stories of people, on Calocurb, and our second value in the company. Our first value is science-led. Our second value is customer success, because without their success, we're not successful. And some of the stories we get back are just, they're delightful. They actually make your day. If you're ever feeling really down, you can go back to one of the stories and go, wow. Yeah. That's great. And it's about, as you said, I can now walk with my grandkids. I can do this. I can cycle my bike.
Has nothing to do with the number on the scales.
No, sleep. Obesity was sleep apnea. Sleep apnea obesity is the number one cause. Getting more sleep. We know what causes huge amounts of anxiety is lack of sleep.
Yeah.
So, it's just health related all the way through. And, we've got plenty to tackle before we even looked at, we're not even interested in that.
Yeah, fair enough. I have so many questions I'd love to ask, but time is just flying by. I would like to, because you have a unique, everyone has a unique perspective, but you have a quite unique perspective as having been on, I would say, all sides of the table, from employee, the CEO, advisory roles, now as a founder, experience with research and investments. So with all these different hats and unique lenses on, what is something that entrepreneurs, female founders, no matter what industry they are in, what they should know? What is something we don't really understand from having sat on all the other sides of the table?
I think importantly, as you need to develop yourself and develop the company. You will represent your company, and I think be proud, be confident, because really investors, they look at the idea, they look at that, but they actually look at the team way more, than they actually. There are big markets out there, and many things do well, much to my disgust when I say, that'll never work. I've been known to do that. So it's about you, and it's about the team you put around you, and how you work together. And so all of those things, all of those experiences that you had is going to make you stronger in doing that.
Beautiful.